You used to think family was everything. That one day, when your hair grayed and your knees softened, your children would sit beside you. That the calls would be more frequent, the visits more intentional, the connection stronger than ever. But now, you're 68, and you're learning the hardest truth of all. Sometimes, love doesn't return the way you gave it. And sometimes, the people you'd do anything for forget to call you back. You don't blame them, not fully. Life is fast. They're raising kids, chasing promotions, fixing things you don't even ask about anymore. But the silence still hurts. Not like a wound, more like a slow leak, draining your energy, your joy, your sense of place. And one morning, while the tea steams beside you, you look out the window and say something out loud that you've only whispered inside. I can't keep waiting for them to see me. That's when everything begins to shift. Because if you can't count on family the way you hoped, you need to find what else holds you up. And what you discover is this. Support doesn't always come from blood. Sometimes it comes from places you never expected, places you chose. It starts with the quiet rhythm of a routine. Not the one they gave you, the one you created yourself. Your morning walk, the same trail, same trees, but every day they feel different because you're showing up differently. You start to realize that movement, even slow, even stiff, grounds you. It gives your day shape. It gives your mind something to hold on to when emotion feels heavy. You begin to look forward to the sound of your own footsteps, not for exercise, for presence, for peace. That trail doesn't care if your son hasn't visited in months. The trees don't ask who forgot your birthday. They just show up, like you do, every morning, and slowly, they start to feel like friends. Then, there's the woman at the corner store, the one who asks if you want your usual. You never told her your whole story, but she remembers your name. And that small moment, someone remembering your name without needing anything from you, feels like warmth on a cold day. You start going there more often, not for the groceries, for the recognition, for the proof that you still exist outside your last name. You join the community center's weekly art group. You've never painted before. But the brush in your hand doesn't care. Nobody talks about grandkids. Nobody asks where your children are. They talk about color, about what shade of blue feels like grief and how yellow can wake something up inside you. And there, in a room full of near strangers, you feel seen. Not for what you were, not for who you raised, for who you are, right now. Support doesn't always show up with a shared last name. Sometimes it shows up in shared space, shared rhythm, shared silence. And when you let go of the idea that only family can hold you, you start to see the world open up. That evening, you sit by the window again, same chair, same tea, but now, you're not waiting for a call. You're reflecting on the people you've quietly let into your life, not because you needed them to rescue you, but because you deserved to be witnessed. In the next part, you'll discover how being needed again can heal something that family forgot to notice, and how purpose can become the most powerful support of all. It happened slowly. First, it was the man down the block who asked if you'd mind watching his dog while he visited his daughter. Then it was the young couple from church who said, "You're always so calm. Would you speak to our son? He listens to people like you." You laughed it off at first, said, "I don't know if I'm the right one." But when you said yes and they thanked you like they meant it, you felt something return to your chest. A feeling you hadn't noticed was missing. Significance. You spent years being useful, providing, guiding, fixing. And then somewhere in the space between retirement, grandkids growing older, and phone calls slowing down, you began to feel like a book no one reached for anymore. Still full of stories, but collecting dust. But now, someone opened a page, and you remembered. You're still a source, still a well, still a flame. It's not about working again or being busy. It's about having a place in someone else's rhythm. Even small things, holding a door, giving directions, listening without rushing to fix. These things carry weight, and when someone looks at you with trust in their eyes, not because they owe you anything, but because they believe in you, that's when you begin to rise again. You started showing up more, not in a loud way, not to chase validation, just to be available, to offer without expecting. At the community library, you helped a teenager understand how to write a proper letter. At the park, you showed a young father how to tighten his child's stroller brakes. These were seconds, but they were sacred, because each one whispered, "You still have something to give." And that truth held you up. You stopped waiting for your children to ask how your day was. You stopped checking your phone, hoping for an invitation. Because your days were full of purpose now. Small, consistent, unglamorous, real. And with every person you helped, every moment you showed up not as dad or grandpa, but as yourself, you rebuilt your value outside the expectations of family. You became more than a relative. You became a pillar. Support isn't just what you receive, it's what you're still strong enough to give. And when you remember that you are still needed, not because of duty, but because of who you are, the loneliness begins to shrink, because you're no longer waiting for someone to knock. You're out in the world again, and the world is meeting you where you are. That night, you write a single line in your journal: "I still matter, and I don't need family to prove it." In the next part, you'll uncover a new kind of connection, the kind that builds quietly between souls who see each other, without history, but with honesty, and how sometimes friends can become family, and even stronger. It's funny, isn't it? The people you thought would be closest in your later years drifted, and the ones you barely knew started showing up in ways that felt deeper than anyone who shares your blood. You didn't expect it, not when you first sat at that community table, coffee in hand, unsure what to say. But the man beside you, maybe 5 years younger, offered you half a muffin and said, "You look like you've seen things. Mind if I ask your opinion?" You talked for 30 minutes. Not about family, not about regrets, just life. Small things, true things. And when you left, you felt lighter, like your story had space again. Then there was Maria, the woman at the art group who laughed with her whole body and never once asked if you had grandkids. She asked what kind of colors calmed you, what your favorite season smelled like, what memory still makes you smile. You don't even know her last name, but you know she listens. That's when it hits you. You don't need people who've known you your whole life. You need people who notice who you are right now. People who look at you not as a collection of past roles, but as a presence, a soul, a voice, a living, feeling human being, still full of thoughts and heart and humor. There's no guilt in this, no betrayal. Your family will always be part of you, but they aren't always your support, because support isn't who shares your last name. It's who sits with your silence without needing to fill it. You start saying yes to more invitations. A potluck, a walking group, an evening poetry night at the library. You don't go to be impressive, you go to be included. And you are. Not because you asked for space, but because you carried yourself like someone who deserved it. And others saw it too. You never imagined you'd build a kind of chosen family at this stage of life. But here you are, laughing with people you met 3 weeks ago more than you've laughed with relatives in 3 years. And it feels real. Because it is. There's a special kind of comfort in being known by someone who didn't live your past but is choosing to walk with you now. That's support. And in many ways, that's stronger than family ever was. That night, you light a candle in the living room, sit with your tea, and smile. Not because anyone called, but because you're no longer alone. Not really. In the next part, you'll discover how creating something just for yourself, a project, a ritual, a rhythm, can become the kind of anchor that even absence can't shake. It started with a notebook. Blank pages, a simple pen, no plan. Just space. You weren't trying to write a book. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were just letting something out. A memory. A quote you half remembered. The feeling of warm sunlight on your back during a Tuesday walk, and suddenly you had something to return to, something that belonged only to you. You used to give your energy away to children, to a spouse, to coworkers, to obligations that ran your life for decades. Now, for the first time, you had energy without assignment, and it made you nervous at first. But then, it made you free. You started rising early again, not because anyone needed breakfast, not to check the news, just to be with yourself, to sit in stillness, to feel what your body felt before the world had a say in it. Some mornings you journaled, others you just stared at the sky and whispered, "I'm still here." You picked up small projects, not because they were important, because they were yours. A puzzle that took a week, a garden in 2 clay pots on the porch, a playlist of songs you loved in your 20s. Each one a little thread that tied you back to yourself. And with each day, you felt something grow inside you that no person, no phone call, no apology could offer. Rootedness. It's easy to feel unsteady when your life used to orbit around others, when the rhythm of your day depended on someone else needing you. But what you found now is a rhythm that no one can take away. And it's not built on noise, it's built on intention. You walk to the store not just to shop, but because it gives your body purpose. You eat dinner by candlelight, not because you have company, but because you're worth the atmosphere. You end each day not asking who called, but remembering what you did with the hours that were yours. There's power in building a life so full of meaning that no absence feels like emptiness anymore. There's peace in no longer waiting for someone to give you permission to matter, because you already do. The phone still doesn't ring as much as you'd like. The mailbox still fills with more ads than letters. But you no longer define your joy by what arrives. You define it by what you choose to create. And tonight, as you sit with your candle, pen in hand, pages slowly filling with moments that belong to you, you feel something you haven't in a long time. Steady. In the final part, you'll uncover the last and most powerful support of all. Not a person, not a habit, but the deep inner knowing that you were always enough. The sky is soft this evening. That quiet kind of blue where the day exhales and the night waits its turn. You sit in your favorite chair, not waiting for anything, not expecting anyone, just breathing, just being. You used to feel a hollowness in these moments. Used to fill the silence with noise, TV scrolling, pacing, anything to feel less alone. But now, you've made peace with the quiet. Not because it stopped hurting, but because you learned to stop fearing it. You no longer reach for your phone the second it buzzes. You don't check social media for faces that never look back. You don't measure your value by how often your children call. Because somewhere along this journey, you uncovered something deeper. You don't need to be remembered to remember who you are. You've spent weeks, months even, building a new life. One grounded in presence, choice, and truth. You've welcomed new voices, tended to old wounds, created spaces that felt sacred without needing anyone else to validate them. And in doing so, you realized the strongest support of all was never someone else. It was you. Not the version of you that hustled for approval, not the one who stayed quiet to keep peace, not the one who kept hoping for something to come back around. The version that sits here now, still, rooted, whole. The version that says, even if no one sees it, I do. Because respect is quiet, dignity is internal, and strength? Strength is what rises in your chest when you stop trying to prove that you're worthy of love and start living like you always were. You pour your tea, you write in your journal, you answer calls when you choose to. You say no without guilt. You say yes without begging for thanks. You laugh with strangers. You share space with people who lift you. You build days that aren't dependent on anyone else's schedule. And in all of it, you stand tall, even when no one's watching. Support isn't always loud. It isn't always found in last names or long histories or people you thought would never drift. Sometimes the truest support is what you cultivate when life doesn't turn out the way you imagined. But you rise anyway. So tonight, as the sky fades to stars, you whisper something under your breath, just for yourself. I am not waiting anymore. I am not fading. I am here. and I am enough. And if this story stirred something in you, if you felt overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten by the people who once meant everything, then please take a quiet moment and subscribe to this channel. Because here we tell the stories that remind you you were never meant to disappear. You're still here. And your story still matters.